The night was cold, darker than usual, and the streets of the colony town were empty. Rain fell hard on the old metal roofs, and the lamps flickered weakly as if they too wanted to hide from the storm. Most people were inside, close to their warm fires and safe from the chill. But one figure moved slowly through the shadows, trembling with every step. She was small, young, and clearly not human. Her skin had a faint glow, her large eyes shining like wet gems in the dim light. Her clothes were torn, thin and already soaked by the rain. She clutched something tightly in her hands, 2 small coins. They rattled in her grip whenever she shivered. It was all she had. At the far end of the street stood a small inn. The light in its window was faint but warm. Inside, a human traveler sat alone. He had taken shelter for the night, hoping for rest before continuing his journey at dawn. His name was Daniel. He was not rich, not famous, just another face among many who wandered from one colony to another. Still, his heart carried scars of his own past. The door creaked open slowly, and Daniel turned his head. In the doorway stood the girl, dripping wet. Her voice was weak, almost breaking. "Human," she whispered. "I only have $2. Please, let me sleep in a warm bed." Her words hung in the air. Daniel frowned. $2 was nothing, not even enough to pay for the cheapest room. The innkeeper had already gone to bed. Leaving Daniel as the only one awake, he looked at her carefully. His instincts warned him this could be a trick. He had seen scams before. Desperate faces hiding dangerous intentions. Yet her trembling form looked too fragile, too broken to be a lie. $2? Daniel repeated. His voice was calm, but inside his mind raced. "That's all?" She nodded quickly. Her eyes glistened with both fear and hope. She stepped forward a little, holding out the coins as if they were precious jewels. Her hands shook violently, not only from the cold but from shame. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He thought about closing the door and pretending he had never seen her. It would be easy, safer, no trouble, no risk. After all, why should he care about some alien stranger? But something in her gaze held him still. It was the look of someone standing on the edge of despair, someone who had nowhere else to go. The storm howled outside, rattling the shutters. The girl flinched at every clap of thunder. She looked smaller and smaller, as if she might disappear into the shadows if he turned her away. Daniel stood slowly. His boots echoed against the wooden floor as he approached her. She took a step back, afraid he might push her out. Instead, he stopped in front of her and stared down. His voice was steady. "Why come to me? Why not someone else?" Her lips trembled. She lowered her head. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Because you are human. Humans sometimes show mercy." The words cut deep. Daniel had heard stories before, how humans were seen by other races. Some feared them, some hated them, but others whispered of their strange habit. They could be cruel, but they could also be kind, and no one ever knew which side they would see. He looked at the coins in her palm. The silver reflected the faint glow of the lantern. 2 small pieces of metal standing between her and the cold night. His chest tightened. He could turn her away and never see her again. She would vanish into the storm, maybe never survive until dawn. The silence grew heavier. The storm outside seemed to wait for his answer. His breath fogged the air as he finally spoke. "You want a warm bed?" She nodded, her entire body shaking. Daniel did not take the money. He closed his eyes for a moment, fighting with himself. He had promised long ago never to get involved in other people's troubles. It always led to danger, it always led to pain. But his hand still reached forward. Not for the coins, but for the door behind her. He pushed it open wider. The cold wind rushed in, biting his skin. He looked at her once more. "Come in," he said quietly. The girl gasped softly, as if she could not believe what she heard. For a moment she did not move. Then her trembling legs carried her across the threshold. She stepped inside, the coins still clutched tightly in her palm. Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness this time, but of relief. Daniel shut the door behind her. The storm roared outside, but in that small inn a strange silence grew. He did not know who she was or why fate had placed her before him. All he knew was that the night had just changed, and with it his life would never be the same. Daniel sat back in his chair, watching the small alien girl sit near the corner of the room. Her wet clothes dripped on the wooden floor, and her small frame shivered under the dim lantern light. She looked fragile, almost like a candle ready to go out. He folded his arms, trying to convince himself that this was a mistake. He should not have let her in. She was trouble, he could feel it, and yet something in his chest whispered differently. His mind argued while his heart stayed restless. The girl held the 2 coins tightly, refusing to let go. She had placed them on the small table between them, as if demanding that he take them. Daniel pushed them back toward her without a word, but she shook her head quickly. Her pride, weak as it was, did not allow her to accept kindness without payment. "Keep it," Daniel said finally. His voice was rough but not unkind. $2 won't buy anything here, her lips trembled. It's all I have," she whispered. "I cannot take your kindness for free." Daniel sighed and rubbed his forehead. He remembered nights when he too had felt helpless, when his ship was destroyed years ago, and he had been left wandering with nothing back then. A stranger had given him food without asking for anything in return. He had survived because of that, and he had promised himself to repay such kindness someday, but that promise had faded over time. Replaced by distrust and scars, he had seen too many betrayals, too many tricks played by desperate souls. He knew the galaxy well, it was not kind. Yet this girl's trembling figure broke through those hard layers of caution. "Why are you alone?" Daniel asked carefully. His tone was firm, as if he were speaking to a soldier rather than a child. The girl lowered her gaze, her hands curled around herself. "They left me," she said softly. "I was no longer useful to them." Daniel frowned. The words carried weight, but she offered no details. He wanted to ask more, but her shoulders shook as if every memory was too heavy to share. For a moment he thought of leaving it alone, but curiosity pressed inside him like a wound that would not heal. "You said humans show mercy," Daniel said. His eyes studied her carefully. "Who told you that?" Her large eyes rose slowly to meet his. The reflection of the lantern flickered inside them. "Stories," she whispered. "Whispers from travelers. Some say humans are cruel, but some say humans can surprise even the cruelest universe." Daniel felt a strange sting inside his chest. He was no hero, no savior. He was just a man trying to stay alive, yet here she was, looking at him as if he carried something rare, something valuable. The storm outside grew louder, rattling the windows. Daniel glanced toward the door. His instincts told him danger might be following her. He had not missed the way she flinched when the wind howled, as if she expected more than thunder outside. "You're hiding from someone," Daniel said quietly, not as a question but as a statement. The girl froze, her breath caught in her throat. She did not answer, but her silence was enough. Daniel leaned back, his jaw tightening. He knew now that trouble was close, very close. He stood up and walked toward the small fireplace at the far end of the room. Tossing in a few pieces of wood, he lit a flame. The warmth spread slowly, casting shadows across the walls. The girl's shivering slowed a little. She kept her eyes on him, uncertain if she should thank him or fear him. Daniel crouched near the fire, letting its heat reach his hands. He tried to clear his thoughts, but questions filled his mind. Should he push her away now before it was too late? Or should he protect her, even if it meant bringing danger upon himself? The memory of that old promise returned again. A stranger had once saved him, given him food, and risked being cheated. Daniel had survived because someone ignored their fear. Could he now turn away when the same choice stood before him? He looked back at the girl. Her eyes were closing slowly, heavy with exhaustion. Her small body leaned against the wall, fighting to stay awake. She looked more like a lost child than anything else, and Daniel felt his defenses breaking further. He whispered to himself, almost too softly to hear, "What am I doing?" For years he had traveled alone. He trusted no one. He let no one close because closeness only led to pain. And now, with a single knock on the door, that wall he had built was cracking. The girl stirred slightly and forced her eyes open. "I will leave at dawn," she said weakly, as if trying to relieve him of his burden. "You will not have to see me again." Her words hit him strangely. Dawn was only hours away, and yet the thought of her stepping out into the storm again left a hollow ache inside him. He told himself it was just pity, just basic human decency, but deep down, he knew it was something heavier. Daniel exhaled slowly and sat back down. He kept one hand near his knife on the table just in case. Trust would not come easily, but neither would rejection. The room fell into silence, broken only by the crackling fire and the storm outside. As the night grew longer, Daniel's mind kept circling the same question. Was this girl his responsibility now? Or was she simply a shadow passing through his life for a single night? He did not know the answer, but one truth became clear in his heart. He had already made a choice by opening the door. And choices like this. They never left without changing everything. The fire burned low, casting a warm glow against the wooden walls. The storm outside still roared. But inside the small inn there was silence. Daniel sat with his arms crossed, his eyes never leaving the girl. She sat near the fire now, trying to dry her soaked clothes. Her small hand stretched toward the flames. The coin still lay on the table between them. Untouched, every so often she glanced at them, then at Daniel, as if silently begging him to accept them. Daniel shook his head each time. He did not need her money. What he needed was answers. She looked fragile, too fragile for the dangers of the world outside. Her glowing eyes reflected the fire, and for the first time, Daniel noticed how young she truly was. Perhaps no older than 15 in human years. He wondered what kind of cruelty had forced someone so young into the streets on a stormy night. "What's your name?" Daniel asked suddenly, breaking the silence. The girl blinked. As if surprised by the question, her lips parted. And for a moment she hesitated, then she whispered, "Leora." Daniel repeated it slowly. "Leora." The name felt strange on his tongue, yet there was something soft about it. Something that did not belong in the harshness of the night. She pulled her knees to her chest, her arms wrapping tightly around them. Her voice was quiet. "What about you, human?" "Daniel," he replied simply, her head tilted slightly, as though she were testing the weight of his name. Then her gaze dropped to the floor again. The firelight made her shadow stretch across the wall. Small and trembling, Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Tell me the truth, Leora," he said in a firm but calm voice. "Who is looking for you?" Her entire body stiffened. Her eyes flickered toward the door. Her breath quickened. She shook her head violently. "No one," she whispered. "I am alone." Daniel frowned. He could hear the fear in her voice. Not the lie of someone trying to deceive him, but the fear of someone too scared to speak. He let out a long breath, forcing himself to stay patient. "I won't hurt you," Daniel said, his tone softer now. "But if someone is after you, I need to know, otherwise you put both of us in danger." Leora's hands tightened around her knees. Her lips pressed together. At last she whispered, "They will find me if I speak of them." Her words chilled Daniel more than the storm outside. Whoever they were, she believed their power stretched even into her silence. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. He was no stranger to fear. He had lived long enough to know the look of someone running from shadows too big to face. The silence between them grew heavy again. Daniel tapped the table with his finger. Staring at the coins, "You keep your money," he said. "But you need to keep your life too, and I can't help if you won't trust me." Her eyes lifted slowly. Wide and uncertain trust to her was like a broken glass. Sharp, painful, hard to hold. Yet in Daniel's voice, she heard something different from the harshness she had known. "You saved me from the cold," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That is enough." Daniel studied her. His instincts told him she was still hiding something. But her fear was too deep. For now, he would not press harder. He leaned back, his hand resting near his knife as always. The fire cracked, filling the silence. Leora's eyes grew heavy, sleep pulling at her. She fought it at first, afraid she might wake to find herself abandoned again. But the warmth, the dryness, and the steady sound of Daniel's breathing lulled her. At last her small head leaned against the wall, and her eyes closed. Daniel watched her for a long time. She looked even smaller now, fragile enough to break if the wind touched her wrong. He rubbed his jaw, shaking his head. What had he done by letting her in? He had promised himself he would never get dragged into anyone else's story. Yet here she was, asleep by his fire, and already his choices were changing. His mind drifted back to his past once more. He remembered when he had been lost, drifting with no home, no help, and a stranger had chosen to show him kindness. Perhaps this was the universe's way of demanding repayment. Perhaps fate had finally come to collect the debt he had carried for so long. But there was still the shadow of danger. He could feel it. Someone out there wanted this girl back or wanted her gone. He glanced toward the door again, his hand tightening. He would not sleep this night. Not fully. His ears stayed sharp, listening beyond the storm for footsteps, for whispers, for anything. The fire dimmed slowly, and the night stretched on. Daniel's eyes moved back to Leora. She stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. Her voice carried fragments of words he did not understand. They sounded like prayers, broken and desperate. He frowned, leaning closer, but she fell silent again. Her glowing eyes remained closed, her face calm for the first time since she had entered. Daniel sat back, exhaling slowly. Fragile trust, that was all this was. A beginning, delicate and dangerous. A trust that could shatter with one wrong move. And yet, for reasons he could not name, Daniel knew he wanted to protect it. The storm raged on, but inside the inn, 2 lives had already begun to intertwine. The coins on the table gleamed under the firelight, untouched, waiting, like silent witnesses to a fragile bond that would soon be tested. The fire had burned low, leaving the room bathed in a soft orange glow. Leora slept lightly, her back against the wall. Her breathing uneven, Daniel sat near the window. His eyes fixed on the storm outside. He had not slept. His instincts kept him awake, and now, in the deep silence of the night, he heard it. At first it was faint, a sound almost hidden under the wind and rain, the crunch of footsteps, slow and deliberate. Daniel's hand slid toward the knife resting on the table. His jaw tightened, his heart beat faster. He leaned closer to the window. The street outside was empty, the storm sweeping water across the stones, yet the sound came again, closer. Heavier, someone was out there, moving carefully. Daniel turned toward Leora. She stirred, her glowing eyes fluttering open. For a moment she looked peaceful, then her body stiffened. Her face turned pale. She had heard it too. She whispered one word, barely audible. Them. Daniel rose quietly, his boots making no sound against the floor. He motioned for her to stay silent. His eyes narrowed as he moved toward the door, pressing his ear against it outside. Muffled voices carried through the storm, harsh and cruel. "Check this way," one voice commanded. She must be hiding nearby. Another voice laughed softly. "She won't last long. The cold will finish her if we don't." Daniel's grip tightened around his knife. He felt Leora's fear pressing into the room like smoke. She crawled closer to him, trembling, her voice shook. "Please, don't let them find me." His eyes met hers, sharp but steady. He did not answer with words. Instead, he stepped back from the door and quietly placed a chair beneath the handle. Locking it in place, he then motioned for her to stay behind him. The voices grew nearer. Their shadows flickered across the window as lantern light swept the street. Daniel crouched low, his muscles tense. Every instinct screamed at him to hand her over, to end this before danger consumed them both. But another part of him, deeper and heavier, refused. He remembered her words. Humans sometimes show mercy. He wondered if she had chosen the wrong human to trust, or if fate had brought her to him for this exact reason. The knock came suddenly, loud and sharp. The wooden door rattled under the strike. "Open up!" A voice barked. "We're searching for someone." "Don't make us come in." Daniel did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on the door. Leora's hands clutched at his sleeve, her nails digging into the fabric. He could feel her shaking. The knock came again, harder this time. "We know she came this way," the voice growled. "Give her to us, human, and we will leave you unharmed." Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. He had faced raiders before, men who thought they could take whatever they wanted. He knew their type, men who only understood strength. His silence was his answer. The shadows lingered outside, voices whispering to one another. At last, the footsteps retreated slightly. The lantern light shifted. Daniel exhaled slowly, but his hand never left his knife. He knew they were not gone, not yet. Minutes passed. Stretching into what felt like hours, the storm masked their movements. But Daniel's instincts told him they were still near. Watching, waiting, Leora pressed closer to him, her voice trembling. "They won't stop. They will keep hunting, they always do." Daniel finally turned to her, his eyes fierce. "Then we won't wait for them," he said. His voice was steady. "At dawn, we leave." Her eyes widened. "Leave? Where?" "Anywhere but here," Daniel muttered. He moved to the table, gathering his small pack, checking the weight of his gear. He was used to running, used to moving from place to place, but this time he was not alone, and that made every choice heavier. Leora hesitated, her face filled with doubt. "You would risk yourself for me?" Daniel paused, his back turned to her, his shoulders stiffened. He did not like questions that forced him to look too closely at himself. After a long silence, he finally said, "I already made my choice when I opened that door." Her lips parted, her eyes filling with something fragile, something she had not felt in a long time: hope. The night dragged on. Daniel remained awake, every sound outside making his hand twitch toward his blade. The storm began to ease near dawn, but the threat did not. He knew those men would return, not with knocks but with steel. When the first light broke across the horizon, Daniel stood pulling his coat tight. He walked to Leora, who had barely slept. Her eyes were heavy but alert. She looked up at him, waiting. "Stay close to me," Daniel said. His tone left no room for argument. "Do exactly as I say." She nodded quickly, clutching the small bag of belongings she carried. Barely anything at all. Daniel opened the door slowly. The cold morning air sweeping in, the street was empty. But he felt the unseen eyes watching somewhere hidden in the fading storm. The hunters were waiting as the two stepped out. Daniel's hand rested on the hilt of his knife. His mind sharp, his body tense beside him. Leora walked quietly, her trust fragile but growing. The shadows in the night had not left. They only moved with them, and Daniel knew as he led her away from the inn that their real journey was only beginning. The morning air was sharp and cold. The storm had passed, but the ground was still wet, puddles reflecting the pale light of dawn. Daniel walked with steady steps, his eyes scanning every shadow. Leora followed close behind, clutching her small bag against her chest. The streets of the colony town were nearly empty. A few merchants opened their shops, yawning and stretching, unaware of the danger that moved silently among them. Daniel could feel it, the weight of eyes watching. The hunters had not given up. They were waiting, patient like wolves. "Keep your head down," Daniel whispered to Leora. His voice was low but firm. She nodded quickly, her hood pulled tightly over her glowing eyes. They slipped past the edge of the marketplace, weaving through the scattered crowd. But it didn't take long. Daniel heard it. Boots behind them. Deliberate following. His jaw tightened. He turned down a narrow alley, pulling Leora with him. The sound followed, quickening. "Run," Daniel ordered. His grip tightened on her arm. They broke into a sprint, splashing through puddles, their breaths sharp in the cold air. Leora's heart pounded wildly. Her small legs struggled to keep up, but fear pushed her forward. She could hear them now, the hunters shouting, their voices cutting through the streets. "There, don't let them escape." Daniel pulled her through a gap between two buildings, the passage so narrow they barely fit. He shoved a barrel behind them to slow pursuit. Then they emerged onto another road, running faster. Every corner seemed to bring more danger. Figures appeared behind them, shadows moving quickly. Daniel's knife was already in his hand. His instincts screamed that they couldn't run forever. They needed cover, they needed a plan. They darted into the forest beyond the colony walls. The trees stood tall and wet, their branches dripping with rain. The ground was slippery, roots twisting under their feet. Daniel led the way, his movements sharp. Precise, Leora stumbled, but he caught her each time. Pulling her forward behind them, the hunters spread out. Voices echoing through the trees, dogs barked, the sound chilling the air. These men were prepared. They had tracked prey before, and they knew how to corner it. Leora's breathing grew heavy, her legs trembled. I can't," she gasped. "You can," Daniel snapped. His tone was harsh, but his grip was steady. "One more step, then another. Don't stop." Tears streamed down her face. But she kept running. Her trust in him, fragile as it was, carried her forward. The forest grew darker, the canopy swallowing the weak sunlight. Daniel slowed, his sharp eyes scanning the terrain. He guided her off the main path, through thick bushes, their clothes catching on branches. He moved like a hunter himself, silent and cautious. They crouched behind a fallen log. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips. Leora froze, barely breathing. The sound of pursuit grew louder. Heavy boots crashed against the wet earth. Dogs barked furiously. Voices shouted, "They went this way." Daniel's hand tightened on his knife. His heart beat steady. He could fight if he had to. But Leora was too vulnerable. One wrong move and they would both be caught. The hunters passed close by, their shadows moving through the mist. Daniel held his breath. The dogs sniffed the ground. Growling for a moment, Daniel thought it was over. Then a distant whistle rang out. The hunters cursed and pulled the dogs away, running toward the sound. Perhaps another group had spotted a false trail. Daniel exhaled slowly, his hand dropping from the knife. Leora slumped against the log, her body shaking. Daniel looked at her, his voice calm but sharp. "This won't stop." They'll keep coming, she nodded weakly, her voice cracked. I told you, they never stop. Daniel leaned back against the log. His mind racing, he had choices. Keep running until they collapsed. Or find a way to turn this chase into a fight they could survive. His instincts told him they needed allies, or at least a place where the hunters had no power. Listen, he said firmly, turning to her. You need to tell me why they're after you. If I'm risking both our lives. I need the truth. Leora's eyes filled with tears. She hesitated, then whispered. They wanted to use me, my kind. We have gifts. They wanted to control me, to sell me. I escaped. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had seen cruelty before, but hearing it from her lips made his blood burn. She was not just a runaway, she was a prize to these men. And they would not stop until they had her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm. Then we make them regret chasing you, he said. His eyes burned with resolve for the first time. Leora looked at him with something stronger than fear. Her fragile trust began to grow roots. She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. The forest was still, but danger lurked in every shadow. Daniel stood, helping her to her feet. Stay close, he said. The chase has begun, but it won't end the way they expect. Leora's small hand clutched his sleeve. Her steps wavered, but she followed. For the first time in days, she did not feel completely alone. As they moved deeper into the forest, Daniel's mind sharpened. Every branch, every path, every sound became part of his plan. He was no stranger to running, but now he was also a protector. And for the first time in years, he had a reason not to give up. The hunters were still out there, circling like wolves, but Daniel was no prey. And as long as Leora was at his side, he would fight like a wolf himself. The forest stretched endlessly, shadows weaving between tall trees. Daniel moved carefully, every step chosen with purpose. Leora stayed close behind him, her breathing heavy but steadier than before. The chase had slowed for now, but both of them knew the hunters were still searching, circling like predators waiting for the right moment. Daniel stopped near a stream. The water was cold and clear. He crouched, filling a small flask and handing it to Leora. She drank quickly, her hands trembling less than before. Her glowing eyes lifted to him, filled with both exhaustion and gratitude. You didn't have to help me, she whispered softly. You could have walked away. Daniel leaned against a tree, his knife resting in his hand. His expression stayed firm. I already told you. I made my choice. Silence lingered between them, broken only by the flow of the stream. Then Leora spoke again, her voice low, almost secretive. In my people's ways, kindness is not small, it is sacred. It cannot be forgotten. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Sacred? She nodded. Yes, we believe kindness is a bond stronger than blood. When someone saves us, we must repay it not with money or gifts, but with loyalty. For as long as we live, we belong to those who showed us mercy. Her words carried weight, and for the first time, Daniel understood that her insistence on giving him the coins was not just desperation. It was tradition, a duty, you mean, Daniel said slowly. Because I let you in, you think you owe me? Leora shook her head. Not owe, Bond. You gave me life when I had nothing left. That makes you part of me. And me part of you. Daniel looked away. Uncomfortable. He was no stranger to debts. He hated the idea of anyone bound to him. Yet when he glanced back at her, he saw the determination in her young face. It wasn't weakness, it was strength. A strength born from belief, Leora, he said firmly. I didn't save you for this, Bond. I did it because... His words trailed off. He wasn't sure himself. Maybe it was the memory of his past. Maybe it was the way her eyes had begged for mercy. Maybe he just couldn't turn his back anymore. She smiled faintly, a rare spark in the shadows of her fear. It doesn't matter why, it matters that you did. Before Daniel could reply, a sharp sound echoed through the trees. Voices again, closer this time. The hunters had found their trail. Daniel cursed under his breath. Move, he ordered. Pulling her to her feet, they ran again, the forest alive with the sound of pursuit. The hunters' shouts carried behind them, the bark of dogs cutting through the air. Leora stumbled but pushed herself forward. Her trust in Daniel gave her strength she didn't know she had. Daniel kept her moving, his eyes scanning for any chance, any advantage at last. They reached a rocky slope, steep but climbable. Daniel grabbed her hand, pulling her up. Rocks cutting against his palms at the top. They found a narrow cave hidden by thick branches. Daniel shoved them aside and guided her inside. They crouched in the darkness, Breaths heavy, hearts pounding, outside. The hunters' voices echoed, but the cave muffled their sound. Leora leaned against the wall, her chest heaving. She looked at Daniel, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You should leave me," she whispered. "If they catch us both, you will die because of me." Daniel shook his head sharply. "Not happening," her voice cracked. "Why? Why risk everything?" Daniel met her gaze, his voice was steady. "Because once someone saved me. I didn't deserve it, but they did it anyway. I lived because of them, and now I can't turn away when it's my turn." Leora's eyes softened. She reached into the small pouch tied to her waist, pulling out a thin, crystal-like shard. It shimmered faintly even in the darkness. She placed it in Daniel's hand. Her fingers lingered, her voice strong despite her fear. "This is my people's mark of bond," she said. "Whoever carries it is protected wherever my kind live. You will be welcomed. You saved me, so now you carry this. You will never walk alone again." Daniel looked at the shard. It felt warm, pulsing faintly with energy. He frowned. "Leora, I don't," she interrupted, her voice clear. "You gave me life. Now I give you my people. No hunter, no master. No tyrant can ever take that from you." For a long moment, Daniel stared at her. His rough exterior cracked just slightly. He closed his fingers around the shard, placing it inside his coat. His voice was low but firm. "Then I'll hold it. And I'll hold you safe until we reach your people." Leora's eyes shone with tears, but she smiled, truly smiled for the first time. Her fragile trust had grown stronger. No longer a flicker, but a flame. Outside, the hunters' voices grew distant, fading deeper into the forest, for now they were safe. But Daniel knew the chase was not over. The final test still waited. He leaned back against the cave wall. Keeping his knife ready, Leora sat beside him, her small shoulder brushing his arm for the first time. She felt safe enough to close her eyes without fear. Daniel stared into the darkness, his jaw set. His thoughts whispered like the wind. Kindness is no small thing, he realized. It changes everything. And though the night was still heavy with danger, Daniel knew one truth: this bond, this gift of kindness, would reshape both their fates. The cave walls echoed with the faint drip of water. The air was damp and the night stretched long. Daniel sat awake, his knife in hand. Watching the entrance beside him, Leora slept lightly, her head leaning against his shoulder. Even in sleep, her face showed traces of fear, but also something new, peace. When dawn arrived, pale light crept into the cave. Daniel shook Leora gently. She stirred, blinking her glowing eyes open. Her small smile appeared when she saw him still there. She had half expected to wake alone, but Daniel had not left. "It's morning," he said quietly. "We move now." They left the cave, stepping carefully down the rocky slope. The forest was calmer, birds calling through the branches. But danger lingered still. Daniel could feel it. He led her along a hidden path, his senses sharp. By midday, they reached a clearing. At first, it seemed peaceful, the grass swaying gently in the wind. But then the sound broke, the crack of branches, the bark of dogs, voices shouted. Growing louder, the hunters had found them. Daniel's grip tightened around his knife. He turned to Leora. "Stay behind me," he ordered firmly. She nodded, though fear flickered in her eyes. Figures emerged from the trees, armored men with harsh eyes. Their leader stepped forward, tall and scarred. His sneer spread wide as he saw the girl. "There you are," he said coldly. "The runaway prize." Daniel stepped between them, his stance steady. "She's not yours," the leader laughed. "She's not yours either, human. Stand aside and live. Or fight and die." Leora clutched Daniel's sleeve, her body trembling, but Daniel did not move. He had faced worse odds before, and he would not abandon her now. The hunters advanced, weapons drawn, Daniel's heart beat steady. He whispered to Leora without turning his head, "When I move, run." "Don't stop," but Leora shook her head fiercely. Her voice cracked but strong. "No, I stay. I won't leave you." The clash came suddenly. The first hunter lunged. Daniel's knife flashed, steel meeting steel. The forest exploded with shouts. Dogs snarled, men cursed. Daniel fought like a storm. Swift and precise, his blade struck true. His fists drove back attackers, yet there were too many. Daniel's breath grew heavy. His muscles burned. Still, he held his ground. Each strike fueled by more than survival. It was fueled by purpose. Leora pressed her hands together, her eyes glowing brighter. A faint energy shimmered around her. She whispered words in her tongue. and the air around her shifted for the first time. Daniel saw the gift her people carried. It was not just tradition, it was power. The light spread like a shield, pushing back one of the hunters who tried to seize her. The man cried out, his weapon falling. The others hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. Daniel seized the chance, driving forward with renewed strength. His blade slashed, his fist struck. The hunters faltered, their leader snarling in rage. "Fall back," one shouted. The dogs whimpered. Pulling away, the men cursed but obeyed, dragging their wounded with them. Within moments, the clearing fell silent again. Only the sound of Daniel's ragged breath and Leora's trembling whispers filled the air. Daniel stood, his chest heaving. His arm ached, blood staining his sleeve. But he was alive. Leora rushed to him, her eyes wide with worry. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," Daniel muttered, wiping the blood from his arm. His gaze stayed fixed on the trees, watching until the last shadow disappeared. Then at last he lowered his knife. Leora's hands glowed faintly as she touched his wound. Warmth spread through his arm, the pain easing. Daniel looked at her, surprised. She smiled faintly. "Another gift of my people," Daniel exhaled slowly, his body relaxing for the first time in days. The tension in his chest lifted. He looked down at her, her face glowing softly in the sunlight. She was no longer just a desperate stranger at his door. She was something more. By evening, they reached the edge of another settlement. Not human this time. Alien structures rose from the ground, shimmering with colors that shifted in the light. Leora's steps quickened, her eyes filled with tears. "Home," she whispered. Her people appeared, moving swiftly toward her, their faces lit with relief and joy. They surrounded her, embracing her, speaking in their flowing tongue. Then their eyes turned to Daniel. Cautious at first, Leora stepped forward, holding up the crystal shard she had given him. Her voice was strong. "He is my bond. He saved me." The aliens bowed their heads. Their leader placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Then you are welcome here, human. You are family now." Daniel stood still, the weight of those words sinking in. He had been alone for so long, wandering from place to place, never belonging, but now, because of one act of kindness, he had found something he never expected, a home. That night they gave him a place to rest, not on the cold ground, not on a stranger's bench, but in a true bed, warm and soft. Leora came to his side before sleep, her glowing eyes full of gratitude. "You gave me a bed when I had nothing," she said softly. "Now my people give one to you." Daniel lay back, closing his tired eyes for the first time in years. He felt peace, the storm, the fear, the chase, all of it seemed far away now. In that quiet moment, Daniel realized the truth. Sometimes the smallest kindness, even $2 and an open door, could change everything. It could turn strangers into family, fear into trust, and loneliness into belonging. The hunters had lost, the bond had been sealed, and as dawn broke over the alien settlement, Daniel knew his journey had not ended. It had only just begun.